Hello, everybody. Dr. F. Scott Field here, and I'd like to introduce you to our newest sponsor. The NPTE Final Frontier is the review course that I wish was around when I took the board exam. For those of you who know my story, it took me a handful of times to pass that exam, and quite frankly, I really wish I had an exam review course around, just like the NPTE Final Frontier. Check out their website, npteff.com, and use the code HET at checkout for 10% off to all of our listeners and fans. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Field, and I've got with us today an amazing guest, Dr. David Bruton Jr. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for having me.
So I thought my journey was pretty non-traditional, going from English major to physical therapist, but you took an extreme non-traditional journey to becoming a physical therapist. Tell us a little bit about your academic journey and then how it's led you to where you are today.
I guess it all starts back to middle school, high school, where I was exposed to physical therapy and understanding and building relationships with those therapists at the time and utilizing our career classes to shadow physical therapists. From then on, I knew I wanted to be a PT. Now, fast forward to Notre Dame, tried pre-med my first year. Didn't go well with a couple things aside from football and then the birth of my oldest son then at 18. So I'm like, I don't know if pre-med's for me at this point in time. So I also did a shift to political science and sociology. So I have that non-traditional educational route, just like yourself. And then, I was fortunate enough to be drafted in the NFL in the 4th round to the Denver Broncos and played 7 years there, 1 year with the Redskins, at the time the Redskins, now Commanders. And then I had another bad concussion in year 8 of my career and decided to call it quits and got right back into school. So I was officially released in 2016 in December, and then I was back in class January of 2017, taking prereqs.
No rest for the weary, huh?
Oh no, I was straight through prereqs for 2.5 years, and then applied in PT school for 2.5.
Yeah, I had to do the same as an English major. It took me about 2 years to get all my prereqs in before I could even apply. So that was fun times. Nothing but math and science,
Yeah. Social science is all cleared and good. Now it's like chemistry, biochem.
Organic chemistry was the death of my pre-med career. That was when I realized I wasn't going to go to med school.
I prayed to God I never had to take that class, and I didn't. Thank gosh. I see you didn't require that one.
So let's talk a little bit about your NFL career here. Obviously, you said you had started PT back in high school, junior high. When you were younger, you'd gone through it a little bit. In the NFL, I know you've suffered a handful of injuries and concussions was one of them. So talk a little bit about that, having gone through some injuries at the highest professional level and how that kind of incorporated into your decision of following through with PT and when to call it quits and your pursuit of becoming a physical therapist.
Well, I would like to thank you for saying a few injuries, even though it's 756 pages of medical records.
Fair enough.
But I think I was just exposed to some great care throughout my time in the league and my time in Notre Dame. Understanding and being an inquisitive individual, asking, why are we doing this? Why are we working on this when it's my ankle? Just those little type of questions just kept, feeding that hunger to potentially want to be a PT down the line. Now, I did have a plethora of injuries, from hamstring strains to PCL sprains, concussions, and everything in between. And the care has just always been great. It's always been top notch. It's always been, but I was also in a great situation with the Broncos, like in comparison to Broncos and the Commanders the Redskins at that time, it was night and day as far as the care and the team. And I think that just kind of solidified my journey for after. And I'm gonna tell you, like, the NFL has like this college program where they they fund for guys to go back to school and, utilize their credit, try to build their credits or get their degree or whatever the case may be. And I tried to do that after year 3, but we were going into the playoffs and that was cutting into the semesters. So I waited till after. I was like, I might as well utilize all that free funding and, in pursuit of my doctoral degree.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you have the opportunities, you got to utilize them, especially nowadays with the cost of education skyrocketing.
For sure.
So I had read something somewhere that you had said your son plays football as well. And concussions seem to be a hot button right now for the NFL. Obviously, there's been a lot of studies being pushed lately. There's new protocols put in place, which, I think is a good thing. And considering they've got an independent group kind of running those. But it sounded like you've already had that conversation with your son about the importance of concussions and what that might look like moving forward. Was concussions eventually the thing that kind of called it quits for you? Was that where you kind of decided that was enough?
Exactly. Yeah, I drew the line after that last one, where I ended up having convergence problems with my left eye, continual headaches, intermittent headaches, and then motion sickness got real bad after that, and it was bad enough for them to end up putting me on IR. So at that point, I knew that I kind of knew that I was done with football. It's like I have had my oldest, I have a now 6-year-old, now 5-year-old, and now our 6-month-old, and I want to be able to give the younger kids the same type of opportunity. Like dad's able to play, dad's able to walk, dad's able to pick me up from school, and not have these type of problems that linger and kind of hinder me from being a dad.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're already educating, and you're already teaching your younger, kids that, hey, concussions are a thing. We need to be aware of them. We need to be careful, and keep an eye on that for sure. But, education and being a lifelong educator, being a lifelong learner, I think that is in a lot of physical therapists. I think it's deeply rooted in what we like to do. And I love the fact that you said, you were just always curious and you were just always asking questions, why are we doing this? How's this going to help? What do I have to know about this? Because again, that curiosity leads to, eventually deeper dives into what's going on. What do you say? What are some of the things and characteristics that you might have taken from football and from your college years and your pro years that kind of helped you with physical therapy and helped you getting into the clinic and starting your own thing?
I think leadership definitely was a big thing. That leadership component, being a 3-year captain for the Broncos, being a captain with Notre Dame, being a NFL player rep for the Broncos for 2 years. Those opportunities led me to like be bold and be willing to be a leader, to take charge, but also be one of those leaders who listen. The one that sits back, lets everybody else talks, and then I'll have my input, and not be one of those hard charged my way or no way at all. So I definitely learned a lot throughout that time. Also, I think what got me through PT school was finding people who had somewhat of a similar background, with a sports background, higher level, military, things of that nature, that there was this camaraderie that they were missing. And that was a big thing that I was missing. I don't miss the contact. I don't miss the concussions. I don't miss my body hurting the next day. I don't miss that. I do miss the locker room. I do miss the camaraderie there. And that's kind of what helped get me through PT school, is just having those close relationships with those with similar backgrounds, where we could just locker room talk in a sense, and then just vibe, and that's kind of where I see between the lines physical therapy is like it's going to have that type of culture where we are building that type of camaraderie, and it's not just an in-season camaraderie, because we have that off season, we have off season training, we have mini camp, so it's going to be that same type of vibe where we are in this, we have a goal, and it's not just for a football analogy, from September to January, February, it's from January year round. We are working year round together to reach your goals, maintain your goals, and enhance your performance.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about PT school as a non-traditional student, if you will. I struggled personally with gross anatomy day one. I walked in and I looked over that table and I said, oh, okay. All right. That's a dead body. All right. And that's going to take me some getting used to, and, luckily I did. It took a couple weeks, but I eased up with it. I got to the point where I was able to, find things and locate things and realize I had a task at hand. But what were some of the things that you went through in PT school as far as like some of the highs and lows or areas of interest or disinterest, if you will? What was PT school like for you?
First and foremost, PT school was a little unorthodox because COVID hit right in the middle of it, right in probably our heaviest year.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time online and then 3-4 weeks of intensive lab at the end and just 8-10 hours in the lab. That's a long day.
Yeah.
That is a long day. I actually enjoyed anatomy, aside from when the formaldehyde or anything was on my face or it always happened to me in the group. It never happened to anybody else. It always flashed on me. It was crazy. But I was also always hungry after it, which was kind of weird at first. And then I started to understand, like, oh, well, that's why formaldehyde triggers that. I think one of the highs of PT school, outside of just the education part and the relationships that I was able to form with students and professors, I think just the emphasis on diversity that came about once the George Floyd incident happened. I think I'm very proud that the school decided to take a stand and acknowledge that there is a problem that needs to be addressed with diversity there, because like I said, there's, like I alluded to earlier, like having that camaraderie and that relationship with other people, but in the same breath, not a lot of people came from the same background I was at. Not a lot of people talked the same way that I talk. So trying to assimilate with them could be rather exhausting. And so, but I'm very much proud of that, and the fact that the school was willing to put me on the scholarship board as a student, and now want me to be part of the alumni association immediately, potentially in a leadership role, and then continuously, even after I'm done, to be on the scholarship board. It definitely meant a lot to me and showed that this school really stood behind, diversity of culture, not just diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what I'm most proud of. And one of my lows, I would say, would be healthcare and delivery. Now we're going back to academia, like insurance over here. Insurance and understanding the ins and outs of that, and Medicare, Medicaid. I was like, oh my goodness, this is stressing me out. I was like, am I going to have to take this class over again if I don't do well on this exam? Or remediate or something along those lines. But I was able to pull it through. But man, that was probably one of my lows of PT school. That class and healthcare delivery too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a necessary evil. We got to know it at least. You got to be aware of it. But then once you get out in the real world, you find other people that are experts at it to kind of do the heavy lifting, And the good news is there are people out there that know it well. So we just rely on them. I always try to outsource the things that I'm not good at or that I don't like doing,
For sure.
So, again, I love the fact that you have all these leadership opportunities being thrown at you left and right. I think, well-deserved for sure. Tell us a little bit about, now you've graduated, you're out there in the real world. What are you up to these days? What are you doing now that you're ready to rock and roll as a full-fledged physical therapist?
Well, I am in the process of locating a spot for Between the Lines physical therapy. So at the current moment, I treat people in the house, or I go to their house, or I go to a gym, similar to how you were doing early on before you got into the teaching. But narrowed it down to like 3 spots that we're trying to settle in on, and just working with contractors, trying to establish like what's the flow of this clinic, like how are we going to have, how's this going to feel like a sports focused PT clinic with a room that could be utilized for concussion and vestibular rehab. Like, how are we going to make that flow? So we've been playing around with design ideas and, obviously the turf and the mats and some of the weights, but then you're like, there's so many weights to use. There's so many different machines. Like, which one's going to be more practical for the type of setting that we're going to be in? And then obviously once the clientele gets a little more ramped up, we can tailor the equipment to how we need and how we see fit. But at this moment, it's just me as the PT, my wife as an admin front desk person, and we're hoping to open doors officially here in May at the latest, and then I want to have somebody else with me here in July, August. Obviously, if the numbers make sense, and whether that's a younger PT such as myself, who we can bounce ideas off of and continue to do some education during lunch here and there, or whether it's somebody with a little more experience, so I get that mentorship. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You have the benefit of having your wife there. I was the receptionist. I was the physical therapist. I was the towel cleaner. I was the laundry guy. I did it all when I first started. So you're already a step ahead. That's for sure. But yeah, making those business decisions is not easy, man. It's a whole new world. But the good thing, again, there's a ton of resources out there. There's a ton of people who've been doing it. There's a ton of experts. So, finding some of those mentors and finding the right people, I think can be a big help for sure. I have, one final question that I kind of want to ask you a little bit about the foundation that you started, Bruton's Books, right? Tell us a little bit about that, because I love the idea behind this. I love the charitable aspect of things. Tell us a little bit about your foundation.
So we established here at Bruton's Books in 2015, and it's geared towards childhood literacy, focused on K through third grade. Why did we choose that grade level? That was because our prisons are built based on reading levels by grade 3. So we decided to try to focus on that. And the emphasis behind Bruton's Books is not just putting tutors in a classroom or volunteering time. It's a grassroots type of foundation where myself and board members and anybody who wants to join can go and try to tutor and help kids read. But also we try to address the accessibility issue. The certain areas of Denver, Colorado it's very diverse. It's a melting pot. There's people with Vietnamese background, African descent, not first generation English speakers. So we have to acknowledge that and try to limit any inequities that they may occur, that they may be faced with in their household, whether that is with books or books of their language, and how we can essentially mitigate any of those potential barriers down the line. But also with Bruton's Books, we take a passion on cardiovascular fitness and bikes. That's my big thing. I love riding bikes, and that's what I wanted to do with the kids. So we did a Bikes for Books ride years and years ago. We want to get that one back up and running. But this year, kids have a chance to win some bikes, some Trek bikes. We have about 20 of them, and we give out 4 this coming week to an elementary school, and then hopefully the next 16 will follow suit in the next few weeks. But there's this correlation between education, reading, comprehension, and cardiovascular fitness, and I utilized that when I was in PT school. Like, I would study, I would still ride a bike. I would study, I would still go work out. I would work out and then study. There's just something about that relationship that allows for better recall, better retention. And I saw benefits to it, and I am a firm believer of it. So that I kind of wanted to bring that home to the kids here in Denver, Colorado, and out there in Dayton, Ohio.
Well, I mean, especially as a physical therapist, right? It fits right in with the world of health and wellness, and I think a healthy body is one thing, but the reading part really, helps to create a healthy mind as well,
For sure.
and I don't even want to get down the rabbit hole of the mental health issues we're facing these days. But I think, helping with reading and literacy is a huge aspect of that. And I think that's a great thing that you're doing. So we appreciate everything that you're out there doing these days. But David, we have one final question we ask all of our guests. And that question is, if you could change one aspect of higher education, whether it be DPT or otherwise, what aspect would you change and how would you change it?
Honestly, I think the thing I would change would be the cost of the institutions. I think that's a big barrier for a lot. And if we're thinking, and I'm just thinking about the diversity and inequities that come along with healthcare, it's like that's a big reason why there's not a lot of diversity in healthcare. It's a big reason why there's not a lot of education in areas that are socioeconomically at a disadvantage. So I think that's something that would need to be addressed, whether it's tiered, whether we cut debt in general, whether we find some way to halt inflation, something, whether we have more scholarship dollars available, something to mitigate that, to change that would go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, social determinants of health, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we're learning more and more that your zip code matters as far as your health goes, and that even goes further down the line to education, right? The
Absolutely.
opportunities that you have based on your zip code, where you live, are huge, so
Absolutely.
cost is definitely one of the number one most given answers on the show for sure. How we address that, again, there's a bunch of really smart people out there trying to do really good things and figure out a way. So I'm all in support of that. But David, thank you again so much for your time and for coming on the show. And like I said, we're really happy to see all the great things you're doing out there. Where can people find you or reach out to you if they want to ask any questions or follow up or look into Bruton's books?
They can go to the website, brutonsbooks.org. We will have live here in the next couple weeks an updated book list where people can purchase books for the schools. They could also find me on Instagram and Twitter. I do not remember my names because they're both different.
Yeah, we can drop
Let's
them.
see.
We'll drop them in the in the show notes. Don't worry about that.
Okay, sounds good. And then you can also follow Between the Lines Physical Therapy on Instagram as well. But yeah, you reach out. We can have a discussion, talk. If you have any questions about building a business or getting one started, or just interested about my journey, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you.